All right, Earthlings, welcome back to the Thundering Dicecast channel. I am Sven, your host for today, and we're going to talk about how Denver, Colorado is full of devils and hell is empty. Now, William Wolfe is a conservative political veteran, served as a senior official in the Trump administration, has a master's degree in divinity from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and he wants to get his PhD with a focus on Christian ethics and political or public theology. He wants to enter a pastoral ministry and engage in the intersection of faith and politics. Now, I have strong feelings about the intersection of faith and politics. In fact, I think that those streets should run parallel and should never intersect. I don't think that faith has a place in our politics, and similarly, I don't believe that politics should have a strong influence on faith, beyond the fact that everybody should be allowed to have whatever faith-based beliefs they want to hold, and they shouldn't be allowed to put those on other people. Now, William Wolfe is convinced that the Denver legislature is taking all of the agency of parenting away from the parents and is giving it to the courts again and to the school systems again. This is a common theme among conservatives, especially when they're talking about gender-affirming care. Now, in this article, Hell is Empty and All the Devils Are in Denver by William Wolfe, published this past Friday, he is making the argument that this is an attack on parental rights and God's created order. Very, very specific about that. So he is very interested in where faith influences politics. And he is not interested, in this case, in politics influencing faith. So he's got one half of the coin correct. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole hate-filled article with you guys. It's full of information, misinformation, I should say. But he has 4 points right here that he thinks is summarizing the bill well. First thing, number 1 is point that the bill redefines parental oversight. The bill classifies a parent's refusal to affirm a child's self-declared gender identity as coercive control, which is considered a form of child abuse. This could trigger state intervention, including investigations by child welfare services. Parents who do not support social or medical transitions may face accusations of neglect or unfit parenting. So, let's take a look at that specifically. What is coercive control? Well, coercive control is often referred to as a range of tactics used by an abuser to establish power and control over their victim. These tactics extend beyond physical violence and often involve emotional, psychological, financial, and social abuse. Okay, that's really important. Emotional, psychological, financial, and social abuse in order to exert control over a person or their actions. So, one of the big things in this bill about legal protections for transgender individuals concerns custody of a child and how that child may or may not be treated based off of the 2 different parents. Now, 2 parents getting a divorce and they have a transgender child may have different ways of raising their child. One may be more like William Wolfe, who thinks that transgenderism is akin to demonness, and the other one may be more open and accepting of their child's needs. So this makes it so that for the purposes of parenting time, a court shall consider dead naming, misgendering, or threatening to publish material related to an individual's gender-affirming healthcare services as a type of coercive control. So controlling the child by not allowing him or her or them to use pronouns they feel comfortable with, not allowing them to dress the way they will, and threatening them with sanctions, essentially, if they refuse to conform to whatever gender identity that parent wants to have that child be. So that's really what that point that he's talking about right there, redefining parental oversight. Mandates transgender affirmation in institutions. If passed, schools, healthcare providers, and counselors must affirm a child's gender identity. Any failure to do so would violate the law. Religious institutions, including churches and Christian schools, would be required to adopt policies aligning with gender identity affirmation or be punished. Well, that second part there, he made up. I've read the bill, and it's literally nothing about Christian schools. In fact, there are exemptions for religious institutions. I might also add that if a Christian organization receives federal funds in a school, that means they are state funds. They are now required to also abide by some state laws. If you're going to accept public funds from the government, you have to cede to some of the policies there. And that includes not being discriminatory. Second part of that, the schools, healthcare providers, and counselors must affirm a child's gender identity. Yes, you aren't allowed to tell a child that they're not allowed to use a certain identity. You are not allowed to tell a child who and what they are. The child is allowed to feel how they are and tell you how they want to be addressed. This is just codifying that and making sure that you can't discriminate based off of it, and you can't force them to do other things in opposition to their own preferred pronouns and their own preferred way of life. Part 3, coerces speech. The bill effectively restricts free speech by compelling the use of pronouns or penalizing language that does not ally with a person's gender identity. Publicly questioning or denying someone's self-professed gender identity would be deemed discriminatory. Yeah, that's fine. People are individuals. You want to champion the rugged individualism of Colorado? Well, let these people be individuals. Let them identify how they feel comfortable. If you are making decisions based off of someone's gender identity, that is discrimination, and it is discriminatory and should not be allowed. And because we have people like William Wolfe who will absolutely discriminate based off of gender identity, we have to have laws that protect people who are in classes that may be endangered by this kind of rhetoric. And then the fourth point here, gives the state final authority over children. The state gains increased power to override parental decisions, allowing minors to accept gender-affirming treatments without parental consent. This provision positions the state as the ultimate arbiter of a child's identity, sidelining family and faith-based values. Once again, I don't think anywhere in this bill, does it say that. So here we're talking about the school part. Sections 5 and 6 provide that a dress code adopted or implemented by a local education provider must allow each student to choose from any of the options provided in the dress code. Boom. Okay, so if a boy is transitioning into girlhood and she prefers to wear the female dress that's approved by the school, then the school can't say that they can't. Sections 7 and 8 define dead naming and misgendering as discriminatory acts in Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act and prohibit these discriminatory acts in places of public accommodation. Again, this is in public. We're not talking about in church. We're not talking about in your Catholic school. If you are raising your trans kid in a Catholic school, I feel so sorry for that child because he or she or they will never feel accepted or happy or comfortable. This is what this is about. This is about letting individuals be individuals and protecting their status as the gender or person they want to be. Now, let's go back to the article here because he's got a couple biblical quotes that I think are very, very interesting. Let's go down here. At the very, very end, he has his sum up. Pastors and churches must lead this charge. Too often, believers have shied away from cultural conflicts, hoping they'll pass. But Scripture commands us to contend for the faith and stand firm. So I looked up those real quick. Jude 1:3. Dear friends, although I was very eager to write to you about the salvation we share, I felt compelled to write and urge you to contend for the faith that was once for all entrusted to God's holy people. Okay, so it's saying fight for the faith. That's all it says. He said he's talking about a letter that Jude wrote saying fight for the faith. And then Ephesians chapter 6, verse 13 in the New International Version. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. So this is very, very angry rhetoric. He's saying, you need to stand by, you need to clothe yourselves in God's armor, and we must do what exactly? Defend boys being boys, girls being girls, and parents having the right to make decisions for their children is what it sounds like, irrespective of what that child actually needs from the parent or from their social services or from God. Every Christian in Colorado must believe that God placed them in the state for such a time as this. Again, you are advocating for the separation of church and state to be removed. You want your church to be all up in the states so that your church can be all up in everyone else's business, regardless of whether they are Christian or not, or they're Muslim or not. This is more than just protecting children. This is protecting their identities and their sense of self-worth and their sense of person. That is what we want to protect. And because of people like William Wolfe getting in the way of that, laws have to be passed. In the same way that anti-discrimination laws in the workplace had to be passed, because these workplace laws enshrined a person's ability to be who they are and still choose the career that they want to pursue. Somebody's gender identity should never have any bearing on who they are as a person and who they want to become and what goals they want to achieve. This here is just overreach by the church into politics as a further way to take politics into your home and how you want to raise your child. If you're having a divorce and you have contentions between that and you're using your child as a coercive control mechanism, or if you are controlling your child in the context of a divorce, saying you are going to be a boy at my house, but dad lets you do whatever, or vice versa, that makes it very difficult for the child to grow up healthy and well-adjusted and feeling supported. These types of articles only seek to empower angry Christian men who think that their choice has been taken from them. Their ability to control their family and their children is being taken from them. While in fact, all that this law is trying to do is protect children's identities and their rights to choose their fates for themselves, and not to allow them to be coerced into false choices or false dichotomies by their parents. Additionally, we don't want this kind of rhetoric making its way into politics because faith has no business dictating policy. Your faith has no business dictating what anybody else can or cannot do for themselves. When you tell children they must conform a certain way, and that if they don't, it's actually the state's fault that they're not confirming your religious biases, you're missing the point of religion. I believe that God and Jesus, should they exist, want you to be happy and healthy and prosperous and live good lives. They don't want you to suffer. They want you to feel comfortable with who you are and do good works in Jesus' name. That is what it is. Being transgender has nothing to do with being religious or not being religious. Being who you want to be and promoting your own rugged individualism is what this is about. This is protecting the rights of the individual from fuckery. We don't want your church in my house. Your church in your church, politics in Congress, and our personal decisions should be free from religious coercion. Well, thank you so much for listening today, guys. Let me know what you think about William Wolfe's contention here that the government is overreaching once again and taking choice away from families. And like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll catch you next time.